Sharon gave us Sharon Ross gave us a wonderful presentation on Kramer's introduction to Mishnah Torah. Let me just recap real quickly what I said. Mishnah Torah, the title of Maimonides' major work of Jewish law, is called Mishnah Torah because it means repetition of the Torah, or a restatement of the Torah. Maimonides' goal in writing Mishnah Torah was to restate the Torah in its entirety, written and oral, in its halakhic aspect, its legal material, in a systematic way that would be easy to access and understand and use for ordinary people. Because Maimonides was concerned that by his time in the 12th century, that knowledge of halakha had become eroded over time, as Jewish communities have been dispersed through the world and communities are embedded in different cultures and whatnot, that Jews had kind of lost the knowledge, lost the ability to work with the classical material. So he wanted to create something that they could, that would kind of, regenerate the halakha so that it could be usable. And secondly, what I was saying is that the Talmud, which itself is very, very difficult to navigate, except if you're a trained scholar, and most people are not. And the Talmud is closed as a work somewhere around the 7th or 8th century. And that's already been 300 years, since until Maimonides' time. And in that 300, for several centuries, there's a lot of halakhic work that's taking place. The sages who come after the Talmudic period, and first in Babylonia, then in Europe, in North Africa, right after the Talmudic period, we have the period of what's called the Geonim. The Geonim were the heads of the rabbinic learning academies of study in Babylonia. They were the ones who picked up the mantle of halakha and began writing interpretations of the Talmud and answering halakhic questions based on the Talmud. They call those questions and answers responsa. The Geonim write these responsa to communities, who are inquiring about what is based on such and such, here are the circumstances, here's my question, based on the Talmud and the halakha, what do we do? The Geonim are writing answers. After the period of the Geonim, when the center of gravity shifts from Babylonia into Europe and North Africa, we begin the period, what's called the Rishonim. The Rishonim are Rishon means first, but they're not the first ones, because you had the sages of the Talmud, and then you had the Geonim, but then you have the Rishonim, the early scholars of Europe and North Africa. Maimonides is in this period of the Rishonim, he's a Rishon. And they're writing responsa and writing interpretations of Talmud and answering legal questions and such. So there's a huge corpus of halakhic writing and rulings and interpretations out there that people just, ordinary people don't know and don't know how to access. So Maimonides' mission is to synthesize all of this into a code, which he calls Mishnah Torah. Now, one of our readings that I think maybe Phil is going to be presenting to us in a couple weeks is something that I wrote about the history of codification in Jewish law. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that. But when I say a code, maybe I asked you this when we did the Mishnah. All right, remember, what is a code in the field of law? Lawyers, what's a code? Phil?
It's basically a statute, a series of statutes on various areas of the law.
Okay, series of statutes in various areas of law. Right, so we have like the American Civil Code or the Commercial Code or whatnot,
The criminal-
right? And the various statutes passed by Congress and the regulations, that interpret the statutes and so are compiled into a systematic digest of here are the rules, right? Lynn, you were gonna say something?
It sets norms.
It sets norms, yeah. Yeah, code sets norms. So somebody, an American lawyer who's practicing commercial law, and I mean, this is not my field, but whatever subset, I imagine that, in order to do your work, you need to know what does the law say about X, Y, Z. So you go to the volumes that you have either online or in your bookshelf of the American Commercial Code, and you look it up, right? And it tells you these are the rules. So what Maimonides writes, he's not the first one to do this, to attempt it, but he's the first one to do it in a way that makes a really big splash. His is really the first major code of law. And it's his goal, as Sharon said in her presentation, to create a work that, and he says this in the introduction to Mishnah Torah, he says, with the Mishnah Torah, nobody's gonna need any other books anymore. Okay, Maimonides, as we know, he was not humble. He thought pretty highly of his work and his intellect, and he said, with the Mishnah Torah, this is the only thing you're gonna need. You don't have to look at the Talmud anymore. You don't have to look at the responsa because I've got it all in here. It's all synthesized. Okay, now, that is a very bold endeavor and a very bold statement. One that is not by any means without controversy. All right, so why do we think Maimonides' project of Mishnah Torah might have been met with controversy? Adam.
He based all of his statements on memory. That basically we memorized the Torah and the Talmud. And those days they didn't have the Sparm and computers to check. So people would say, well, how do we know that the way he's saying it is the way it really is?
Okay, yeah, that's true. The technologies that he was working with are a lot different now. So Maimonides surely had access to manuscripts, that circulated. In his time, there weren't photocopiers, there weren't printers, certainly wasn't the internet. But the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, existed in writing, and people would copy it over, and so there are written copies of it, which Maimonides had access to, and also knew so much by memory. But yes, okay, that's an important feature of the Mishnah Torah. What Adam said is he doesn't cite his sources, he doesn't show his work, and that's a major point of contention with the Mishnah Torah, is that while he's working off his knowledge of text and looking at text, and I mean, he's incredibly well read and knows all the material, he presents his rulings in clear, concise paragraphs for the purpose of ease of use, right? And he determined that in order for it to be easy to use, I've got to eliminate all the back and forth, which makes the Talmud so hard to follow. So Maimonides kind of, he made decisions. And he didn't show his work. He didn't tell you how he got there. So that's a major problem for some people, because like Adam says, like, how do we know that he's right? Okay, that's one point of controversy. What else? Yeah, Rabbi Gold.
I think that some people then and now, they live for studying Talmud all day. So
Okay.
Being told it's worthless it was not worthwhile, you should use this book instead, so
Yeah.
the whole life told, they're being told it's not good anymore.
Okay, yeah, so studying it, so there's a couple things about that. One, studying the Talmud. In Maimonides' time, as in our own, is for many Jews a spiritual practice. Just the act of studying the Talmud is an encounter with God and with spirituality. And so you don't like the idea of saying, oh, you don't need to look at the Talmud anymore. But even more importantly than that is Maimonides' assertion of authority. Because by saying that now with my book, you don't need to look at the Talmud anymore, because I've told you what you need to know, Maimonides is kind of saying that we don't need the sages anymore. You've got me, okay? And that's a stunning assertion of hubris that some scholars say, like, that's a little too far to go. The Talmud is our foundational text. I mean, with the written Torah, that's and you can't supplant that. You can try to create notes and so forth for people, ease of use, but it always has to go back to the Talmud. You can't supplant the Talmud. That doesn't feel right to us. Okay? Yeah, Phil.
So today, how relevant is the Mishnah Torah?
The Mishnah Torah is incredibly relevant. As I said, it's the first major law code of halakha. It's not the last word in codification. And when you read my article, you'll or it's not really an article, but my essay about it, you'll see that while Maimonides was very successful in creating the kind of work that he wanted, it wasn't ultimately kind of accepted as the final word. There was still there's still enough dissatisfaction with what he did that generated for a further need to refine. But that said, all codifiers who come after Maimonides always look to the Mishnah Torah to guide their work.
We have two
The
hands up on
Rambam-
Zoom,
Okay,
Marcy
the Rambam
and
is-
Ivan.
Okay, thank you, Dory. The Rambam's work is of utmost importance in halakha. You can't have a conversation about halakha without taking account of Rambam's work. So it's that important. Okay, so we had a question, Ivan?
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find confusing is that it seems like Maimonides has said you need to know God, but how can you know God if you're just reading the Cliff Notes? You're not reading the actual Word of God. So it seems like you're cheating.
Yeah, that's a critique, against it, that this isn't what you've done here is useful as far as it goes, but it takes its Cliff Notes to the main thing. Whereas Maimonides' goal was to say that it's not Cliff Notes, it's just this is the main thing. Like this is all you need anymore. Right? And remember, because Maimonides didn't want Jews to spend their entire life studying Talmud. They needed to study halakha, but they also needed to study philosophy and science and mathematics and all of these other disciplines of knowledge. The Mishnah Torah would enable that, right? Whereas the Talmud doesn't, because it's just too big and too all-consuming. Plus the culture around Talmud study, like Lori mentioned, is too all-consuming, and Rambam wants a more holistic curriculum of knowledge. Okay, Marcy, go ahead.
I think another reason that that it was troubling or unacceptable to many was that the standard procedure, the accepted way for a student, for rabbis to opine or to find a position was to base it on findings of others before them and giving credit to them, the sort of thing that leads to, as Rabbi so-and-so said, that Rabbi so-and-so said, that Rabbi so-and-so said, going back like 3 or 4 generations, and to then wipe that out. That was just unacceptable to the rabbis, to people who had been trained in that world.
Yes, and that uplifts a really important part of Jewish culture. The give and take of debate, the lineage of ideas, the ethos of discussion is so important to who we are as Jews that Maimonides in his work did not have enough appreciation for that. And it's hard to say that about Maimonides. He obviously understood, the culture, but I think he didn't appreciate enough against the broad scheme of Jewish history, both past and future, how short-circuiting that culture of give and take would land. And in the end, no, it doesn't prevail. Because as much as important as Mishnah Torah is to halacha, and again, no one does halacha without looking at the Mishnah Torah. That would be impossible to do. But it never achieved the status that he hoped for it. Because as a culture, we just value the give and take and the lineage of ideas too much. And in fact, something I want to show you, I don't remember if I gave this in the book. I don't think I did. I'm just going to show you something. Give me a sec to find this. I want to show you a page of Mishnah Torah as it's printed today. Good. Okay. So I'm going to put this on the screen.
Need to share. There you go.
Got it. Okay. So, how do I need to zoom out or make this view smaller?
And maximize the web page too. That might help.
There we go. Okay.
There.
All right. So this is from a page of the Mishnah Torah in its standard printing. Now, what does this look like to you? Looks like the Talmud, exactly. Now, Maimonides' Mishnah Torah is the middle column, the middle block. This is what he wrote. Okay. But over time, what happens?
The comments come back in.
The comments come back in. Right? The comments on what he wrote. Exactly. Come back in. The give and take, the quibbling, raising points of difficulty and trying to resolve them and tracing the lineage of ideas, it always finds its way back in. That's Jewish culture. Okay, so Maimonides set out to write, he just wrote the middle. He didn't want all of this stuff. But then after his death, and you find that. The equilibrium in Jewish learning is always this. Conversations between, across time and space, between scholars, all on the same page. Okay, Arlene.
Is the commentaries around it, are those I'll call them ancient commentaries? You know, the
No,
ones
these
that
are
were in the
commentaries.
Talmud, or are these new things?
No. These are commentaries that other rabbis
That
wrote
after he wrote.
explaining the Mishnah Torah.
So it's not the.
And some of his commentators, right, no, so some of his, so there's commentators in the Mishnah Torah who write their commentaries to show Maimonides, trace his sources, because he didn't do it. So they try to reconstruct his thinking. There's commentaries that attempt to defend Maimonides' rulings. You know, for people who say like, well, where did he get that? Who says that he's right? There's commentaries that like defend him and show like why he's actually right. And then there's commentaries that attack him and show why he's wrong. And they all end up on the page around his writing. Yeah, Jen.
I have a question. Did a school form around his writing where people did study just Mishnah Torah and science and philosophy and do what he envisioned?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
University of whatever.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is that there's a school of study called the Brisker School, which Brisk is a town, I don't know, in Ukraine or somewhere around, you know, in Eastern Europe. And there's a method of study called the Brisker method, and the Brisker method is about studying the Talmud and alongside Mishnah Torah, and maybe even other works alongside Mishnah Torah, but using the Mishnah Torah as the benchmark. The assumption of the Brisker method is that Rambam is always right.
Ooh,
Okay?
big fan club.
Yeah. So Rambam is always right. So if in studying Mishnah Torah alongside with the Talmud or something else, and it seems like there's a contradiction between what Rambam is saying and whatever, and what the Talmud is saying, the working assumption is Rambam is always right. So you have to figure out how he's right. Exactly. And if it seems like he's wrong, it's actually not that he's wrong, it's that you're wrong. You don't understand yet. And you have to figure it out. That's the Brisker method of study. Yeah, David.
So when in the more later books, in the Shulchan Aruch,
Yeah,
is it like this as well? Do you have
Yes.
main parts and tons of commentary around it?
it always ends up like this. Yes, Adam.
The traditional way of deciding whether someone's right or not is how close they are to Mount Sinai in age. In other words, Moses said, did this, and there are many sages since then, and the closer they are to Mount Sinai, the more right they are.
Yeah, and yes, and that's all.
But this Brisker method discounts that method. And
No, it's not, well, it's not discounting that, it's just that what the idea, the working idea is that it's not that Rambam is right and Rabbi Akiva is wrong. It's that Rambam's understanding of Rabbi Akiva and whatever else is always right. So if you're reading Rabbi Akiva, or if you're reading a debate in the Talmud between Rabbi Akiva and, Hillel or whatever, and it looks like, and then Rambam says something, and it looks like what Rambam is saying seems to be different from what the Talmud is saying, then it's not that the Talmud is wrong, it's just that Rambam's understanding of the Talmud is correct and yours is wrong. So you have to figure out why Rambam is right. Okay, so Rav Soloveitchik, Joseph Soloveitchik, he comes from the Brisker school. In fact, maybe his like grandfather or great grandfather or something, whatever, was like the founder of the school. And Rav Soloveitchik, in one of his books, tells the story of being a kid, and his father is in the house. He has students over in the house, and they're studying the Talmud, and they're doing the Brisker method. And he narrates the story. He's like, I'm in my room and I'm listening, to the people debate. My father's students, they're debating in the other room, and he's like following, like someone might follow a baseball game or something. And he said, so and so, I heard him talking. And they said like, Rav Ashi, is attacking the Rambam. And what's going to happen? The Rambam is on the ropes, and then he said, and then so-and-so comes in, and he defended the Rambam, and the Rambam is right, and he saved the day, like he's just narrating this whole thing. It's very cool. How they did, that for them was like, that's the spiritual activity par excellence. Because if you can come to understand the Rambam's view, you have attained, knowledge. Okay. So anyway, well, I just
Charlie has his hand up real quick.
Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, and the Talmud, there are a lot of discussions that end with it being unresolved. So what happens there?
Yeah. So in cases where the Talmud leaves things open, later halakhic authorities often, resolve it through responsa or whatnot. And Rambam, he looks at those responsa. He knows the opinions. He rules in accord. He's not, generally speaking, like making things up. He has no reason to do that. He knows all of the material. And so if there's a ruling on something and it's become kind of an accepted ruling, he rules that way in the Mishnah Torah, even if he doesn't tell you that where he's getting it. But there are also instances, and scholars of Maimonides that kind of show this, that like where Rambam just makes his own decision because the answer is not clear, and he just decides. Okay, so he's a judge. I mean, this is what he's doing. He's right. He is a legal decisor. Yeah, Bob.
I'm just wondering if when he set out to do this, forgetting about his arrogance, if we can, but if he's setting out to do this, to bring the people, all of us are all over in so many different places because of war and immigration. Do you think he was successful? I'm just wondering.
Well, he was successful in some ways and not in other ways. I mean, he was successful in in figuring out a way to systematize the vast sea of halakha in a way that's usable and understandable and accessible to ordinary people. That was a major part of his project. He was not successful in creating a work that would supplant all other works. Okay, so it's a mixed, outcome. All right, so we're going to get into some text. The first thing that I want to show you about Mishneh Torah, Sharon mentioned in her presentation, is that part of Mishneh Torah, which Sharon had described as a prelude to Mishneh Torah, is a book or a section called Sefer HaMitzvot. Means the Book of Commandments. And the Book of Commandments enumerates the 613 commandments of the Torah. Now, this is a really important work by Maimonides, because The Talmud tells us that there are 613 commandments, 248 positive commandments, meaning thou shalt, 365 negative commandments, thou shalt nots. This is said in the Talmud. The problem is that the Talmud does not tell us what the commandments are. It just tells us how many. Okay? So, because, and why, you know, maybe the section about that, in the 613, it's almost like an agadic section. It's like this rabbi says there's 600, you know, there's 613 commandments, 248 of them correspond to the, you know, the ligaments or whatever in the body, and 365 correspond to the solar days of the year. And then that's it. It's like it could be that it was a rabbi was just, that the rabbi in the Talmud was making like a nice midrash, you know, or a fun teaching. But that's not how the tradition read it. That you know, students of the Talmud read that, like, oh, it says there's 613, so there must be 613. Now we have to figure out what they are, because we got to know how to fulfill the commandments, right? So Rambam comes on, and I think he is the first one to do it. I'm not entirely sure, but we can say with certainty he's the first one of that really kind of with of major significance to do it. He counts up the 613 commandments and lists them in Sefer HaMitzvot. And he gives us a commandment, he gives us an accounting of them, and then for each one he gives you a little paragraph about this is the commandment, here's where it's found in the Bible, here's where it's discussed in the Talmud. Okay, so it's a handy guide if you want to look up and if you want to learn more about the commandments. So what we're going to see here,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Is this part of the Mishnah Torah, or this was a separate thing that he wrote?
It's like a separate, but it's kind of it goes hand in hand with the Mishnah Torah. Okay, so let's scroll down, Doria. I want to take a look at the list. Let's look at the list of the.
Not in order is how it appears in Torah.
Correct. Yeah. Oh, we don't want to look at this story. I want to look at the book that says. I'll put it up here.
Just give me the name of the file real quick. I have it shared already.
Yeah, here it is. The commandments. Yeah, the 613. So let's scroll down, and we're going to look at the list. So, so he organizes them by positive commandments and negative commandments. And the Talmud had told us there's 248 positive commandments. So here I gave you the list and Sefer HaMitzvot. So you can just see. Now let's look at the beginning. Commandment number 1, believing in God. Remember, we talked about that a couple weeks ago when we were studying
13.
the 13 principles of faith, right? Commandment number 1 is belief in God, because everything else from Maimonides flows from that. God is the creator and the lawgiver. So if you don't believe in God, then you don't believe in the source of mitzvot, and there's no mitzvot, and the whole system is incoherent. So he lists as number 1, believing in God. And then he goes, the unity of God, the love of God. Those are principles of faith. We saw some of those things. The unity, loving God, fear of God, worshiping God, cleaving to God, taking an oath by God's name, walking in God's ways, sanctifying God's name, reading the Shema, studying the Torah. Okay, so he organizes his commandments. They're kind of like by subject, I guess. And then he gives them an order of importance to him. But as Adam pointed out, this is not the order in which the commandments are given in the Torah. He's not listing them that way. He's listing them in order of kind of, I guess, importance as he sees it. So the first commandment for him is believing in God. The first commandment in the order of the Torah, does anybody know what it is?
Be fruitful and
Be fruitful and multiply. That's right. So that's a commandment. That's one of the 613, but for him, it's not listed number 1. Now, if you scroll down, Dory, let's take a look at the the negative, but yeah, let's go a little further. You can just see as you're seeing through all the different positive mitzvot, the things that you're supposed to do. And then the negative commandments, these are the thou shalt not. So again, he starts with God, with theology, believing in or ascribing any deity to any but him, making images for the purpose of worship, making an idol for others to worship, making figures of human beings, bowing down to an idol, worshiping idols. So he demonstrates, and he'll show you in Sefer HaMitzvot, the biblical source, okay, for each of the mitzvot, and then he tells you where to find the discussion of it in the Talmud. That's Sefer HaMitzvot. Mishnah Torah then comes along using the mitzvot kind of as the basis. Each mitzvah has various details and permutations of laws that relate to it. Okay, Mishnah Torah outlines all of that. So whereas Sefer HaMitzvot gives you one paragraph about where it came from, here's what the commandment is, here's where it came from, here's where it's discussed in the Talmud. The Mishnah Torah says, take for example, the commandment, honor your parents. Sefer HaMitzvot would say you can find that in Exodus chapter 20 in the 10 Commandments, and it's discussed in such and such volume of the Talmud. Mishnah Torah will have a whole section on the laws of honoring your parents. Okay? Because honor your parent, honor your mother and father is a mitzvah, but there's lots of stuff that the halakha developed about how you go about doing that commandment. Mishnah Torah is where all of that is codified. Okay? So we're going to get into a text now in Mishnah Torah. We're going to start with laws of conversion. Thought it was interesting, and we're going to get to it. So, of course, the Torah itself doesn't say anything about, conversion, but the Talmud develops, kind of laws based on its reading of the Torah about conversion, and then Maimonides codifies it in a systematic way. So when we study it, we're going to study this section dealing with conversion, and we're going to see what he's doing and how does the Mishnah Torah make a contribution? How does it add value, to Jews and to our understanding of conversion? David, you had a question?
Yeah, does he anywhere address that the 365 negative commandments is fitting with a very non-Jewish type of calendar?
No, it's just that the Talmud says that's why.
It's just like, it's weird that they should.
Yeah.
Accept
Well, the sages were aware of the solar calendar, and they, it's the Jewish calendar is like a hybrid of the lunar and the solar. Yeah, who knows why? It's Rabbi Simlai, I think is the name of the sage in the Talmud, who just said that 365 and 248, and then he just doesn't say any more about it. But Maimonides builds it all out for us. And then you should know that Maimonides' counting of the mitzvot is not definitive. Others, not surprisingly, disagree with his counting and propose other countings. Okay, so there's a big literature, a genre of literature called Sifrei Mitzvot, books of commandments, all of which attempt to count up to 613, and there's lots and lots of overlap, to be sure, but there are differences.
But they're all using 613.
They're all using 613.
They're just parsing them differently.
Exactly. Yeah,
With
exactly.
that, they're all, but it's 600.
No, it's just Rabbi Simlai made it up. He said there's 613 commandments, 248 positive, 365 negative. That's all. We don't know why he came up with that or what. It just says it in the Talmud. So the people who read the Talmud said, well, there must be 613. We got to figure out what they are. David?
I'll just because the 248, I believe, he says, comes from the bones in the body.
Yeah.
And correct me here, a kid is born with like 270 bones.
Okay.
An adult has like 210 votes. So,
Okay.
you know, he's choosing, why is he choosing it?
Yeah, who knows? It's rabbinic science and whatever. Doesn't matter, it's just, this is where the tradition of 613 comes from. And on the basis of that, it's built out, and you have the countings, and then you have the halakha about it. It's just a construction of, you know, a legal culture. Dory, scroll up. I want to show everybody, you go to the cover page. No, go up higher. I want to go to the cover page. Okay, so here you have, this is from an English translation, a very good English edition of the Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah consists of, it's subdivided, and I don't remember the number now of books of Mishnah Torah. It's probably maybe one of the articles I gave you. 14 books, okay. So you see, each book within the Mishnah Torah, it's a subdivision, is called a Sefer book. Sefer Kedusha, the book of holiness. That's one of them. There's the book of knowledge, there's the book of seeds and agriculture, there's a book of divine service, there's a book of seasons, like he divides them. You know, because he's organizing by topic. So here we are in Sefer Kedusha, the book of holiness, and you see that this volume tells us what's in the book of holiness. You have Hilchot, halakha is law, right? So Hilchot is the laws of. So Hilchot Isurei Bia, the laws governing forbidden sexual relationships. Hilchot Ma'achalot Asurot, the laws governing forbidden foods. And Hilchot Shchita, the laws of ritual slaughter. These are the topics that are addressed in Sefer Kedusha. So you can see how they're organized by topic. If you want to know about Shchita, slaughter, you go find it in Sefer Kedusha, Hilchot Shchita, and it's all outlined right there for you. You don't have to look in many different places, you just find it all in one place. Now, tonight, we're going to be studying a chapter on conversion. Now notice, okay, so stop there. Dory, let's go to the top of that page. It is in Hilchot Isurei Bia, the laws of forbidden sexual relations. Now, why does Maimonides, and this is a question, not only when studying Rambam, but just studying law generally. The act of categorizing is in of itself an act of interpretation and has legal implications. So Maimonides puts the laws of conversion in the laws of forbidden sexual relations. So why? What is that about? What does that say then to you about his understanding of conversion? Jen?
That you can marry. I mean, it seems like you can't marry someone who's not Jewish, so.
Correct.
That would be the way to make it happen.
Correct, yeah. Because the Torah prohibits sexual relations with non-Jews. Okay, so in Maimonides' understanding of the law, conversion is a remedy, as it were, for that issue. You know, in order for a Jewish person to be able to have sexual relations with a non-Jew, the non-Jew converts, and then it's not prohibited anymore. Okay, so conversion for him is rooted in that soil. Sexual relations and Jewish, non-Jewish relations. Now, somebody else could classify conversion somewhere else. If you were writing a code of Jewish law, where would you put conversion? How would you categorize it? In other words, conversion belongs to this sphere of Jewish life. Adam.
The laws of who is a Jew.
The law of who is a Jew, okay, that would be a reasonable place to put it. Where would somebody else have another idea? Arlene?
The laws of marriage.
The laws of marriage could be there, yeah, David?
Didn't you teach us though that somebody should not convert to be married?
Yeah,
Somebody said-
oh, absolutely.
So that's
Yeah.
opposite of this.
No, opposite of what?
What, if it's in the laws to get married, you're not supposed to convert specifically to get.
Well, if that's your motivation.
Yeah, that's it.
Correct, yeah. No, but and that's true, but, okay, so that might be an argument about like, against putting it in the category of laws of marriage, maybe. Ed?
I think it should be its own category. There's nothing to do with most of the other.
But does it have to do with anything else in Jewish life? Like, is conversion a unique thing in Jewish life, or could you categorize it with something like I would say maybe like, you know, in our parlance, we might say like the laws of life cycle, right? Or, you know, the laws, I could make a case maybe for, putting it in the laws of Talmud Torah study. Right? Because like conversion is, significantly about a path of study, learning the mitzvot and accepting them. Like, the only point being, there's no right or wrong. It's just, what I want to highlight is that where you categorize says something about how you understand what you're talking about. And how other people should understand what you're talking about. So for Maimonides, conversion grows out of the soil of sexual relations and Jewish, non-Jewish interrelationship. That's what it's about for him, okay? So let's, so you see, the Hilchot Isurei Bia, this edition tells us, these laws of forbidden sexual relationships contain 37 mitzvot, 1 positive commandment and 36 negative. And it tells you, and Maimonides tells you, these are all of the commandments of the 613. These are the commandments that are relevant to Isurei Bia. And I'm going to forbidden sexual relations, and I'm going to elaborate all of the details of laws in this area of Jewish life. Conversion happens to be one of those things for him. Okay, so let's go and get into, Charlie, your hand's raised.
Yeah, you said you weren't supposed to have sex with a Gentile, but I didn't see it on the list. Number 24 says not to marry a Gentile.
Okay, yeah, okay, fair enough. Maybe he's talking about in terms of marrying. You can't marry a Gentile because you can't have sex with a Gentile, or you can't have sex with a Gentile because you can't marry a Gentile. I mean, yeah, he's that's a good question. We would need to look up that commandment. Not to marry a Gentile. Maybe you can find it in Sefer HaMitzvot in that list that I gave you and see what he says about the details of it. But in any case, for the purposes of conversion, he's in that sphere. Yes, Karen?
I think one of the earlier mitzvot is to not have sex before marriage, period.
I don't know. I'm not sure
I thought I read that one.
maybe look back through Sefer HaMitzvot.
For a woman, but not for a man.
Okay, let's go, Dory, let's scroll down to the chapter. Let's scroll down to keep going. Let's scroll down to the chapter. Chapter 13. Okay. Number 1. Israel entered the covenant with God with 3 acts: circumcision, immersion, and offering a sacrifice. Now he tells us the footnote there, which is the editor. See, Maimonides doesn't tell us this, but the footnote, which is at the bottom of the next page, because this edition is laid out Hebrew on one side, English on the other. The footnote refers back to Tosafot, which is commentary in the Talmud. refer to this as the covenant which separated the Jews from the other nations. The Rambam is emphasizing that all of these acts were performed in preparation for the giving of the Torah when the covenant took effect. Okay, so what are they? They are circumcision, immersion, and offering a sacrifice. Number two, circumcision took place in Egypt before the paschal sacrifice, of which Exodus says, no uncircumcised person shall partake of it. Moses, our teacher, circumcised the people. For with the exception of the tribe of Levi, the entire people neglected the covenant of circumcision in Egypt. Regarding this, Deuteronomy 33:9 praises the Levites, saying, they upheld your covenant. Okay, so I want you to see here that in addition, he hasn't so much stated a law yet, a norm, like do this. What is he doing right here at the beginning of this chapter? How would you describe what he's doing, Jen?
Like he's setting the context.
Setting a context, yeah, yeah, and he's telling a story, also, right? He's giving us a historical context and a lineage for these practices. What we're going to find is that circumcision, immersion, and offering a sacrifice are the three elements that are required for conversion. Okay, but he's telling the story of why are those three things that were required for conversion? He's telling a story. Okay, so in Egypt, they assimilated to the Egyptian culture, they neglected the law, but before receiving the Torah, Moses made sure that all the men were circumcised, that everyone had immersed properly, and was ready, to enter and to make a sacrifice and enter into the covenant. Let's scroll down. Dory, number 3. It's going to be there's 3. Okay. Immersion was performed in the desert before the giving of the Torah, as Exodus 19 states. Sanctify them today and tomorrow, and have them wash their garments. Sacrifices were also offered then, as the Torah states, and he sent out the youth of the children of Israel, and they brought burnt offerings. They offered them as agents of the entire Jewish people. Number 4, similarly, for all future generations, when a Gentile desires to enter into the covenant, take shelter under the wings of the divine presence, and accept the yoke of the Torah, he must undergo circumcision, immersion, and the offering of a sacrifice. And a woman who converts must undergo immersion and bring a sacrifice. As Numbers 15 teaches, as it is for you, so shall it be for the convert. Meaning, just as you entered the covenant with circumcision, immersion, and the offering of sacrifice, so too for future generations, a convert must undergo circumcision, immersion, and must bring a sacrifice. All right, now up to this point, this is really important to understanding the significance, the meaning of conversion. By setting it in this context and in this storytelling, what is Rambam telling us about conversion? I can't see. Mark.
It's hard.
Okay, it is hard. I'm not sure. Yes, it is hard. What else is he telling us about conversion? Frank?
Well, it puts the convert in the same position as all the Israelites who received the Torah.
Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. So what's one thing that we know from the Torah, the Torah says many times, you shall not oppress the stranger, etc. The word for stranger in the Torah is ger, which is also the word for convert. And the Talmud teaches that the convert is equal to the native-born Jew in every respect. And you shall not oppress. You're not supposed to, according to halakha, you're not supposed to mention, to somebody that, well, you're a convert or whatever. Like that's not nice. You're not supposed to do that because it's kind of the equivalent of, citizen, native-born citizen and naturalized citizen are equal in all respects. So Rambam he's setting the context for why that's the case. It's the case because the act of conversion is as though the convert is placing him or herself in the pre-Sinai moment, just like everybody else was, and performing the same ritual before they accept the covenant, such that we are the same. We underwent the same experience. Okay? All right, number 5. Okay, what is the sacrifice that a convert is required to bring? A burnt offering of an animal, or 2 turtle doves, or 2 fledgling doves. Both of the doves must be brought as burnt offerings. In the present age, when there are no sacrifices, a convert must undergo circumcision and immersion. When the temple is rebuilt, he must bring a sacrifice. Okay, so Rambam is acknowledging the reality of his own time. There is no more temple. We don't do sacrifices. So without a temple, there's only 2 elements of conversion, and that is circumcision and immersion. But when there is a temple, sacrifice is also involved. Okay, now one thing about Rambam's code that's important to know, that's different from other codes of law, is that he codifies the whole Torah, including everything about sacrifices, even though sacrifice was not practiced in his time. There was no temple in his time. Other codifiers decide to omit sacrifices and everything pertaining to Eretz Yisrael and all kinds of things that if it wasn't operative in their time, they just didn't codify it. Because on the reasoning that, like, people who need to know the halakha and practice in our time, they don't need to know all that stuff. I'm not going to waste my time putting it together. But Rambam codified the whole thing. Okay, so he's got lots of stuff about sacrifices and tithing fruits in Eretz Yisrael, all these kinds of things that is inoperative, it's theoretical. He codified it anyway. Okay, number 6. When a convert is circumcised, but does not immerse himself, or immerses himself but was not circumcised, he is not considered a convert until he performs both of these activities. He must immerse himself in the presence of 3 men. What do we call that? A Beit Din. Yeah, a Beit Din. A Beit Din is a court. And it doesn't have to be an institutionalized kind of court with 3 judges sitting there. Any 3 Jewish men, according to Maimonides halacha, can constitute a Beit Din. They do not have to be rabbis. They just have to be 3 Jewish men who have some knowledge of the laws of conversion.
How about a woman?
No, not for Maimonides. No. In our time, in our practice, in Reformed Jewish practice, yes. But in Maimonides halacha, no.
Who judges whether a woman is converted or not?
3 men.
They have to watch the woman going.
They did, yeah. They listen, or they have a. I don't know exactly how it works, but there's like a woman who goes to the the mikveh, and the 3 men are sitting behind a partition, and the woman, who observes, from my experience, I mean, will say, she did it. The kasher was kosher, and the Beit Din has to witness it that way. Okay, so he's telling us the laws here of both things are required, and it has to be done in front of a Beit Din. All right, since a court is required, he may not immerse on the Sabbath or on festivals or during the night. If, however, they had him immerse at night, he is a convert. Okay, so this is, here you have before the fact and after the fact. Before the fact, you're not supposed to do it at night. Let's see, what does the footnote say about why that is? Number 10, what does footnote 10 say? Footnote 10, for a court does not hold sessions at these times. Another reason why the immersion should not be performed at this time is that it amends the person's state, and that is not permitted on the Sabbath. Like a transformation of a status. That's why you don't have marriages on Shabbat. Because a marriage is a transformation of status in the eyes of the law. Okay, and you don't do that on Sabbath. Nevertheless, the Rambam considers the first rationale of primary importance. It's when courts meet. They don't do it on the Sabbath, but that's before the fact. Now there's a concept in halakha of after the fact. If you did it on the Sabbath, even though you weren't supposed to, it counts. Still good. Okay? Before the fact and after the fact. Before the fact, don't do it. After the fact, I already did it. Okay. It's good. You're kosher. Okay. Number 7. We immerse a minor who seeks to convert based upon the guidance of the court. For it is an advantage for a person to convert. When keep going, we're going to come back to that part. When a pregnant woman converts and immerses herself, her child does not require immersion. When a convert immerses himself alone and converts alone, or even if he does this in the presence of 2 persons, his conversion is not valid. If he comes and says, I converted in the court of so-and-so and they had me immersed, his word is not accepted with regard to license to marry among the Jewish people unless he brings witnesses who testify to the truth of his statements. Okay, so this is a change in status. And in order for a person to legally have the status, halakhically, the procedures have to be followed properly. Now, I want to go back to the part at the beginning about the minor. We immerse a minor who seeks to convert based on the guidance of the court. Let's take a look at the footnote. There. Footnote 12. Footnote 12 says, conversion, a change in status, must be brought about through a conscious decision by the convert. A minor is not considered as able to make mature decisions and is not held responsible for his conduct. Therefore, he cannot make the decision to convert. Nevertheless, the Jewish court makes this decision on his behalf. The converted child, however, has the option of refuting the conversion when he comes of age. If he protests his conversion at that time, he is considered a Gentile and need not observe the mitzvot. If, however, he accepts his conversion when he comes of age, but regrets afterwards, he is bound by his original decision. And then number 13, as a person cannot act on another person's behalf unless it is considered to his benefit. Okay, yeah. But our sages consider becoming part of the Jewish people a benefit sufficient to justify their actions. The Magid Mishnah, that's a commentary on Mishnah Torah, explains that although the Torah and its mitzvot compel a person to restrain his conduct, as long as he is young and has not become habituated to forbidden conduct, he will be able to accommodate himself to the Torah's guidelines. Okay, so we have a couple of issues at work here with respect to the minor. All right, tell me, what are the halakhic issues that Rambam is raising? Ed?
Well, it's really a consent.
Consent.
The minor is unable to consent.
Right.
The minor coming of age and refute what
Yeah.
was done on his or her behalf.
Right, okay.
If it's not refuted, it's fine.
It's fine, okay, so consent of minors is one issue. Here, what else is, what's another issue? Adam?
Unconverted.
Yeah, unconverting, deconvert, or it's like, it's essentially, the minor is like, essentially like a probationary conversion status. Like, it's good unless when he becomes of age, he decides he doesn't want to be a Jew. Okay, what else, Frank?
Necessary procedures, this is a very procedural section here.
Right, it is.
If you do two, it's no good, but if you say you did three, it is good, but you know.
Correct,
There's
yeah.
a lot of procedure.
There is a lot of procedure. The ritual affects the legal status change, okay? So no matter how much, if somebody studies Judaism for 10 years and knows the Mishnah Torah back and forth and you know, comes to the synagogue all the time and volunteers for things and bakes for the oneg, but they don't undergo these rituals, they are not Jewish according to halacha. It's the rituals that affect the status. Okay, now this is important in thinking about halacha, thinking about conversion, especially in our own time as Reformed Jews. Because this will probably not surprise you, that people, I mean, various permutations of situations where people say like, so-and-so, you know, they didn't convert, but they're more Jewish than I am. Or, so-and-so, you know, has been living a Jewish life for 15 years. You know, or you name it, something like that. The underlying question being, do we really have to do these rituals? Can conversion be affected by association, by practice, by assent to a belief system, by anything else? In other words, is there such a thing as common law conversion? Right? Like common law marriage. It's like, well, you live together for all, you know, and people basically consider you married, so you didn't really have a wedding, but so what? You're basically married. That's common law marriage. Is there common law conversion? Frank's attention to, and notices Maimonides' attention to detail, it answers that question. There is no common law conversion. You have to undergo the ritual. Yeah, Susan.
When you adopt a child.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just adopt a child.
Yeah.
And then I heard about this.
Uh-huh.
And I checked with an American rabbi and with a British one. They both said the same thing.
Yeah.
As a Reform rabbi, I would say you don't have to. But as a father, if it was my child, I would circumcise, which is good meaning, and immerse both my daughter and my son, and then they would consent in front of the Beth-El.
Yeah. So that's what accords the conversion. Now so Maimonides is codifying the law that the rituals have to be performed, and his codification reflects the consensus opinion of the Talmud. But remember, the Talmud has lots of give and take, and the rabbinic literature pre-Maimonides has lots of give and take, and there is debate about this, you know, amongst the sages. Some, you know, and there's a discussion about like you know, situations like we find in our own congregations, like so and so is you know, lives among us and comes to the synagogue, you know, every day and prays and does all these things, and you know, can that person be considered a Jew because they've bought into Judaism? essentially. But ultimately the sages reject it. So in Maimonides' code here, he doesn't tell us that that this was a matter of debate and discussion, because in codifying the law, it's like, oh, all you need to know is the answer. You don't need to know the back and forth. Okay, but the back and forth is also interesting and helps you learn things like why if you had to imagine yourself in this discussion with other sages about can so-and-so who comes to the synagogue and begs for the oneg be just considered a Jew because they've bought in? And they live a Jewish life. What would be the argument against that, Jen?
Backing up a second, it'd be interesting to see, in a place where you were not allowed to be Jewish, in Russia, or, Soviet Union, whatever, you couldn't get a Beit Din together. Maybe, okay, you can live yourself as a Jew because you say you are.
Yeah.
But I feel like psychologically, it's about the change of state internally for the individual, which is why I understand why it's a requirement, because you want to believe it for yourself.
Okay, so I think that's a good, spiritual explanation for it. There are other reasons, though, that are I might describe as more practical.
Like inheritance or whatever.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of practical law, remember, he's talking about this in the context of forbidden sexual relations, which pertains to marriage. If it is forbidden for so-and-so to marry a non-Jew, then if I'm going to marry so-and-so, I need to know that they are Jewish, because if I marry them and they're not, I'm in violation of the halakha, I'm in violation of the Torah. I need an objective way that everybody will agree upon that makes them Jewish. Because my marriage is not only about me and the other person, it's also about the society in which I live that accords legitimacy to it. So if so-and-so, if I say, I'm marrying so-and-so, and she came from a non-Jewish family, but she's been living a Jewish life, and she volunteers for the sisterhood, bazaar, and works at the bake sale. There's nobody more Jewish than her. And the community can say, well, that's great, but that's subjective. How do I really know? But if you can demonstrate to me that they did immersion and they did circumcision, then we know. And then it's an objective standard that we can all agree upon. So that's a very practical reason. Another one, and this is a kind of a philosophical reason, and then Len, I'll take a comment. Philosophical reason, which I find very interesting and compelling. Although personally I'm not sure I'm convinced. The sage, I'm not sure I'm convinced by it. The opinion about a common law, like someone who lives a Jewish life and associates, could be Jewish, is rejected on the grounds that if you say the person has accepted Judaism, okay, part of accepting Judaism is accepting that Judaism requires conversion. Okay, so if you accept everything about Judaism, but not the requirement of conversion, you actually haven't accepted Judaism. Right? Okay, Len.
It just kind of occurs to me that part of it is the purity issue, but it's also the status of any children who are born of this union.
Yes, that's the other big one. Yes, that's the other big one, exactly. And because that will impact lives, and the status of children. All right, let's keep going. We'll read a little more. Okay. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say about the minor and the issue of benefit. You remember they said that the court, under the auspices of the parent, you know, like a parent brings a minor, the court can authorize it, even though a person is a minor and, you know, they can't make their own choice about it, but the court can authorize it on the grounds that they're authorizing something for the benefit of the child. Okay, and they're saying, and Rambam is saying that becoming Jewish is a benefit. However, there is a Talmudic discussion also about this that's really interesting and raises some questions that he's not dealing with, which is if a person, if the child is from a family that is non-observant, and the family wants to bring them a conversion, there is a concern that converting them is actually not for the benefit of the child. And the reason is that once a person becomes a Jew, they take on the responsibility of the mitzvot. And then if they don't observe the mitzvot, they're in breach with God. Yeah, like there's consequences, right, for not observing mitzvot. We're talking here about the Maimonides halakha, that's classical halakha. There's consequences for not observing mitzvot. So the Beit Din, and this is what he says, like in the judgment of the Beit Din, they can act. But the Beit Din has to judge. If they think that this child is apt to grow up and not observe the Torah, then it would be harmful to the child to convert them. Because then they would be setting them up to be in a condition of being in breach with the Torah, right? So that's something when Rambam says at the discretion of the Beit Din, he's building that in. Unless you know the Talmud stuff, you won't know that, but he's just telling you the Beit Din has the discretion to make that decision.
I sort of
Okay.
lost it. I thought if the parents were Jewish, you would automatically become Jewish.
Maybe they will.
No. Let's say let's say there's a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother. Child is not Jewish because it's matrilineal descent. Okay, so let's say a father that brings a son or a daughter to the Beit Din, says, I want to convert my child, my minor. Or a minor comes to the Beit Din and wants to do it, I guess, from non-Jewish parents. The Beit Din has the discretion to make this, to act on behalf of the minor, but part of their discretion has to be taking into consideration whether this person is going to be in a position or be likely to observe the mitzvot, because if they're not, they won't allow it because that would be harmful. Yeah, David.
But at the bottom of number 12, it says that at the time of when they become of age and they have their bar mitzvah, they get asked whether they want to remain or not. So
Yeah.
that really counteracts that if they are not going to follow it, then they say no. Then what's the problem with whether you did it earlier?
No. Because what if they say yes? I want to still be Jewish, but they're not going to follow all the mitzvot. This is an active issue even in our own time. Not in our congregation, not in Reformed Judaism, but in Orthodox congregations. If the Orthodox rabbi or Beit Din is going to make a judgment about a person, whether a minor or not, that they're going to convert and then they're not going to be observant. Maybe their intention is like, yeah, I want to be observant, but they determine like, yeah, but I see, the circumstances in which this person lives, and I just don't think it's going to work out. They make the decision not to convert him because it would ultimately bring harm to that person.
If a person is 13 and says, I want to convert, and says, I'm, get circumcised and go in the water, they can say, no, we don't want you to.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely they can. And a basic rule in the laws of conversion, that just is operative for everything, is everything is subject to the discretion of the Beit Din. That's an operative rule in conversion. And the Beit Din has to use its judgment in making ultimately the decision about to convert or not. Okay, Ed.
Being this is so procedural and so many different contexts are considered, where did our more modern version of study come from?
Well, study is a part of the requirements, not so much study like a course of study, but what the law, let's see if I guess we're out of time, so we can't get to it. Maybe we'll pick up with, let me think about next week's session and whether we'll have time. But one of the requirements of a conversion is that the Talmud says, someone wants to convert, you tell them about, some of the major mitzvot, some of the major like positive mitzvot, some of the major negative mitzvot, and ask them like, you want to take this on? Okay, and then if they say yes, then they go to the Beit Din, and then you execute the procedures. So it's like, yeah, you have to talk to them about like what it involves, to be Jewish, and then they have to agree. They have to say like, yeah, I'm on board for that. So it's not like a rigorous course of study, but it is knowing something. You have to know what you're accepting. Now, in terms of where does the practice come from for us about course of study? Well, I can't speak to what to it in outside of the Reform context, but in the Reform context, we are not rigorous about, converts pledging to a certain standard of observance. Instead, our culture is centered on people kind of, buying into the idea of Judaism, the ideas of Judaism, like the principles and the holidays and whatnot. And so in order to be able to do that in Reform Judaism, we felt that like, you need to learn about the basics. You need to know some Jewish history and holidays and basic beliefs and things like that, so that you can go into it with a running start to live a Jewish life. Okay, but in the classical halakha, the main and only concern is upholding the Torah. And if a convert isn't going to uphold the Torah, then you just don't let them convert. Okay. All right. So we're going to end it because it's 8:34.
Is there class next week?
Oh, good question. Next week there is not class. I will be out of town. So no class next week. We will resume the following week, and we're just going to continue in the Mishnah Torah. We're going to learn about the laws of Purim. So take a look at that. If you want to take a look at the rest of Hilchot, the conversion stuff, and see what else is there. But you're getting a sense of the Rambam style. We're going to get into it in another subject next time. All right, thanks everybody.